Good morning, Young Kings. Time for your more motivation this morning. Um, just got back from walking. Just walked another 4 miles today. Felt pretty good. I actually picked up the pace a little. Um, when I go walking, I stay on the track, and it's a quarter mile track. So did approximately 16 laps around. But what I did today is kind of pick up the pace a little. Trying to test and see exactly where my leg was, and so when I walked the track, what I did is kind of jog slash sprint to straightaway. So it's my first time running in about a month since this thing has transpired, and I must say it felt pretty good running for the first time again. When you first get injured, it feels like it's going to take forever, and that you see very little progress along the way. But and there were some setbacks. There were some times that I didn't do anything during that month, just trying to rest and recover it. But today I was able to jog slash sprint a little. So I will walk the majority of the lap, and then that last straightaway I jogged, um, and I kept increasing it just to try to push it a little. And I did notice it when I first jogged that both my calf and my thigh, I was mindful of it. So anything that uh, tinkled or anything, I was noticing. I was like, okay, there's still something there, but I still have some ability to do something. So I was cautious not to push it too far. Part of me, being hard headed the way I am, I wanted to say, hey, let's just go see, run how far you can go. But this is critical when you're coming out of a wounded state. It's not to overdo it. Don't turn those inches into miles. You want to celebrate where you are. So I was disciplined enough to just run that straight away and then walk the rest of the lap and then run that straight away. But each time I picked up the pace a little. I didn't increase the distance, but I increased the speed in which I was running. So um, by the time I got to that 16th lap, I was about, at an 80, 85% speed of just trying to sprint. So I went to just barely jogging that one, and the next one I got a little faster. The next one, just continue to do that and pick up the pace. So um, the thing about that is, like I said, be disciplined. Don't turn inches into miles. Meaning, like, if you're not disciplined, you can say, "Oh, it feels good. Let me go out there and do this," and then you'll find yourself injured again, and you'll have another setback. So it's a very critical stage that I'm at because the body is allowing me to do more than it has before, but it's still not to where I need it to be in order to really get back into conditioning. So what I will do, I gotta fly in here somewhere. It's gonna be annoying, but what I'll do is continue to do that, and then I'll progress to maybe running both the straightaways, and then maybe run a lap, walk a lap, run a lap. So just kind of got a regiment to just start making progress on where I'm at. And it's not just to get back to where I was. The objective is to be even better than I was before. I stretched today, and like I said, that's one of the areas that I normally neglect. When I go out and work out, I just get up and I go out and I just start running. So today I stretched both before and after, just to make sure my body was ready for the conditioning in which I had for it. So I'm going to continue the stretching, and I'll probably pick up yoga, and I'm going to alter some of my routines as I progress in this fitness journey, meaning that it won't just be a distance thing. I was trying to celebrate how far I was going, but sometimes you got to change it up. So it won't. I probably only run distance one time a week. And when I mean distance, I mean probably over 5, 6, 7 miles one time a week, and the rest of that it'd be hit training, high interval, intensity interval training, and just try to condition my body to be better. That was kind of a long introduction, and this video probably won't be long. Well, let me not lie to you. But your more motivation this morning is that conflict is not your enemy. Avoiding it is. And a lot of people think that when things get difficult, that it's not supposed to be. So they're in conflict avoidance. And I will tell you this as young kings, it's like you will get paid for your ability to solve problems, not your ability to avoid them. So wherever you are progressing in life, your pay will be equivalent to your ability to solve problems. I'm not saying cause problems, but your pay will be equivalent to your ability to solve problems. So if you're one of the ones that avoid problems, not only are you not going to get paid, but then you're going to live a life of frustration and not being able to have healthy relationships. So I think conflict, people think that it's a means to end a relationship. To me, it's necessary to sustain it. If you don't have conflict, then you don't know what the true depth of that friendship, that relationship, that business partner, whatever it is. If you don't have conflict, then you don't really know the depth of the extent of that relationship. Conflict will tell you a lot about how people truly feel about you. If you want, because love is not meant for the good times. You know, a lot of people associate love with good, but anybody can love in good times. But the true test of love is when all hell breaks loose. And that's where the real things happen in people's lives, where they start to wonder if they truly love someone because they're having issues with this. And the problem is that, can you love them through it? And if you can't, then you probably didn't love them to begin with. Well, there's different stages of love too. You know, they got the agape, they got the phileo, you know, and they got different, you know, philemon. They got different levels of love. So one is just eros, it's a romantic love. Phileo is that friendship love. That agape is that unconditional love. So when people say they love you, or you know, communicate that to you, you got to understand which one is it. Is it an eros? They just have fondness of you, and maybe because you're attractive, or maybe because you do this for them, the way you articulate this and that. Is it just a friendship, phileo, or is it unconditional because of who you are? You know, they love you for being you, and that's where that unconditional love come from. But even in unconditional love, that's not unconditional acceptance. Just because you love somebody unconditionally don't mean you have to avoid conflict with them. Conflict is a necessary ingredient to a healthy relationship. And most people won't tell you that. They'll tell you like, man, I wouldn't put up with that if I were you. And if I were you, I would do A, B, and C. And the truth of the matter, when people start telling you that, you got to have the wisdom to say, you ain't me. You got to have the wisdom and knowledge to understand, like, hey, if I don't address this, then it's going to be a big issue later. And there's a progression in conflict avoidance for those where they're in relationship, where they're in business. And I'm going to come back to that. No, let me do this now, because I'll probably forget if I don't come back to this. If I try to come back to this, the stage it progresses. It's like something happens, incident happens, and you have a choice at that incident, because in your mind, in your personality, you understand that this is not in line with what I want to happen in my life. And when that incident comes to challenge that, you got a choice to make. Do you address it, or do you tolerate it? So if you address it, then you can squash it while it's still in its infancy stages, and you can turn a misunderstanding into a shared understanding of setting your boundaries of what people should do and can't do around you. So that's where you address it. And it looks like conflict. And I've had people tell me like, man, no, I didn't mean it that way. No. You know, you overreacting. But the fact is, I'm conditioning people how to treat me. Like, I asked that question, what do you mean by that? What are you trying to say? Hey, you know, no, I didn't mean that. You know, it's like, okay, then let's get some clarity, because what you're saying is different than, you know, what I'm understanding. So people who know me know that I address things when they're small. And to a lot of people, I get the term that I'm an asshole. And no, it's like I'm trying to preserve our friendship, because, you know, the thing why I got to question it in the infancy stages, because questions is the bridge from, you know, ignorance to information. You know, I got to ask the question. I got to make sure that you're not just doing something by accident or on purpose. So I can tell your intent through my questions. Like, what do you mean by that? Oh, no, it's just a joke. And I say, all right, don't joke with me like that. You know, let's get it straight. So that's when you address it, and it looks like conflict, and it looks like, hey, you always trying to check people. No, I'm not checking people. I'm trying to prevent the severing of a relationship by shared understanding. So that's the way I address it. But if you go the route of tolerating it, let's say you something happens and you tolerate that, what you just condition that person to let them know it's okay for them to do that, even though that bothered you. You still conditioning them to say that it's okay. But it doesn't stop there. When you tolerate someone or you tolerate an event, now that becomes your new standard. Because if you try to address it after you tolerate it for a while, their first statement back to you, like, man, I did that many times. You ain't never said nothing. You tripping now. What's going on? Like, because you tolerated it, you gave them permission and a license to continue down that road that they wasn't supposed to be traveling to begin with. So it starts with toleration. You tolerate it. And in your mind, you frustrate, like, oh man, I should have said something. I'm going to tell you how you know that you tolerate it. Because it progresses to frustration. When you get from that tolerating it into a point where they keep doing it, now you're going to progress to frustration. And I'm going to tell you how you know if you get to that stage. It's because when it happens in the frustration stage, you start formulating a train of thought in your head. Like, man, they doing that on purpose. Next time they do that, I'm going to have to say something. Or you start conditioning the response that's kind of like less than all the way addressing it, but you want to make it known through a joke or something. Hey, man, you always doing this. Why you doing that? You try to, instead of addressing it, you try to dance around the topic to get to a direct response, but you're not being direct at all. So you go from tolerating it to being frustrated by it. And it doesn't stop there, because that person that you gave this license to just run rampant and doing whatever they want to do, it's going to progressively get worse. So you tolerate it, you frustrate it, and now it's going to get to a point where you resent this person. And you're going to start like, man, I can't stand this person. They always doing A, B, and C. And it's going to get progressive. It's making you worse, but you gave this person freedom. You gave them an inch, and now they're here running marathons around you and what they think they can get away with. So don't let them run marathons. I want you to stop at that first step. I don't want to take this path all the way down to see how far you can go to get there. So you got to start correcting stuff when it's small. Conflict is not your issue. Conflict avoidance is, because now what you tolerated, and then you got frustrated, and now you didn't get to a point where you resent it. Now that relationship is severed, because now you don't want nothing to do with this person, because they didn't just get to a point where they're just getting on your nerve, and now you want to just not even deal with them no more. So in your attempt to save the relationships by tolerating it, you actually severing it by not addressing it. But the key to it, if you do address it and it does sever, it was good. That means it wasn't a relationship you were supposed to have to begin with. And I say that to say this, like, if you got to let people to walk on you, to be around you, hey, let them walk on out. You can walk out of my life. I like, real talk. You ain't really got to deal with me like that. I don't. If that's the cost of your friendship, that cost is too high. Like, I'm not paying that much. My peace and my ability to navigate through life is, man, if I'm not going to be me, who I'm going to be? Like, I'm not going to sit here frustrated and let you sit in comfort, because your comfort is frustrating me. Like, how are you getting to a point where you content with just doing this? So like I said on the video before, I address molehills before they become mountains. And people are like, hey man, everything don't take a hammer. Hey, that fly is getting on my nerve. I'll squash that thing with a hammer. It ain't gonna fly no more once I get off this camera, and because it's in an environment it ain't supposed to be in. So I got a few stories on this regarding conflict avoidance, and for me, I address it, because that's what I get paid to do, to be a problem solver. Like, I condition people how to talk to me. And I remember the assignment before this one, I had a very difficult boss to work for. And he's the guy is smart. a lawyer, very articulate, but very abrasive and aggressive how he talks to people. And, he uses intelligence at times. You can feel like he used it to intimidate you or to try to punk you or something like that. And for me, it's like, I'm a respectful man and I give respect to people and I expect the same in return. So everybody's talking to me about him when I was coming on assignment and about like, hey, watch out for this, man, this and this and that. And I take it with a grain of salt because I make my own assessment. I'm a grown man. I don't need people to make decisions for me. But, we're in briefings and I'm seeing how he's talking to other people. And he's the boss. He's the '06 colonel. And at the time, I'm a major. I'm a '04. This dude's two ranks ahead of me. And this guy's probably going to be a general with his ambition and whatnot. But the issue was that he would had the right intention, but sometimes it just came off wrong. How he would talk to people in meetings, and he got around to me, and he kind of like stumped a chump. He in my mind, I'm thinking it's a verbal battle. Like he put you on a spot to embarrass you, to ask you a question that he thought you couldn't answer, to show you how smart he was. But my method when I go to briefings and I prepare for a briefing, I want to answer the question before it's asked. Meaning, like, I'm doing my research to ensure that I know about this topic that I'm speaking of. Like, if I'm the subject matter expert in this area, there's no way someone outside this area is supposed to know more about it than me. And I challenge my staff to do that. I question them, like, hey, what about this? What about that? So when I go into my briefings, I'm studied. I didn't know what I'm talking about. And so he's asking me these questions and, just trying to stump me or whatever. And I got to answer to him, and I'm responding like, hey, no, sir, that's not correct. This is the way it is. And he was like, hey, hold up. This is what I'm talking about. I was like, well, sir, I'm just trying to correct you because what you're stating is wrong. And he was extremely frustrated because he's used to people just sitting there and receiving and not giving back to them. But I was in a state like, no, I need to provide this correction. And people used to pull me to the side that outrank me. My current boss now was my boss back at my last job. And he was under this colonel as well. He was the '05, the lieutenant colonel. And he used to pull me to the side. It's like, hey, Major Morton, when we get in these briefings, you got to just let him be who he is. That's how he is. That's what he does. Sometimes he just wants to go out there and he just wants to say something. And it's he doesn't like you when you correct him in front of other people. And I said, well, I don't like it when he challenged me in front of other people. And we just had this laugh. He's like, yeah, but that's just who he is. That's who he's always been. And I said, well, sir, with all due respect, but this is who I am. And this is who I've always been. Like, I'm not just going to sit there and let an error go forth and then be blamed for the error that he's miscommunicating. Like, especially if I'm trying to give him the right information for the best of the organization. And we went back and forth. And to make a long story short, I kept on. I mean, we had a pretty rough relationship to a point where we actually had to have a closed door meeting between me and him. And I came up to the thing and we had some words. And then he said, hey, I just need to talk to you behind closed door. Of course, we took a few days because our exchange was very heated and people were like shocked. And I remember he pulled me in his office. He was like, there's something about you. And he meant it as an insult or an indictment against me. And he was like, no one has ever talked to me the way you talk to me. And he says, I think you lack character or respect. And I'm letting him get out his little spill about trying to indictment on how I speak to him or whatnot. And then he said, what are your thoughts? I said, sir, everything I've communicated to you has been in the best interest of the organization. And when I disagree with you, I let you know. But above all, I'm a man first. I said, I know you require respect and you senior to me, but I still require respect as a man. And, we got a more heated discussion. And then after that, we left and we just ended that. He said, you're just going to stand on that man bullshit? I said, yes, sir. I'm a man just like you are. And we ended the conversation and we went out that door. But I tell you what, after we had that conversation, those briefings changed. It was no longer stump to chump. It wasn't like, hey, put me on the spot. I had just conditioned him how I was to be talked to. So it became a more professional engagement. And I started to earn his trust. Even though he was upset that I came to him about that, he respected me that I did that. And after I left that position, um, he approached me and said I help him grow. And the reality of it, he helped me grow. I mean, I studied my ass off before I went to those briefings because I knew he was going to be asking more questions, and he was digging in to try to figure out how much to the extent that I knew. But not only did he gain respect for me through that encounter, but the other thing that happened is that my boss now went to a new position and got promoted, and he had to look back, and he had a vacancy for lieutenant colonel and to lead a battalion, and he chose me. The same guy that I had these conversations where he used to try to tell me, hey, calm down, that's just who he is. Like, when he got to his position and promoted, he reached back and he grabbed me. And that's because he knew, he understood. And I'm not going to read into his mind and say he knew, but using my imagination, he knew that I was doing what was best for the organization and that I was not going to bow down to something that was less than the best. So um, that conflict, if I had avoided it, I probably wouldn't. If I would have just bowed down, I don't know if I would have been promoted this soon. But the ability to stand up and say, nah, that's not right, and then not only just say no, but then articulate why I'm saying no, or what my train of thought is, that may be contrary to what you're thinking. And regardless of that, I don't subscribe to groupthink, and I think we went over that in the previous video, because groupthink really hurts organization. And it's 22 minutes, and I didn't mean to go that long on that example. But just in general, anybody that knows me knows that I'm about respect. Like, I'm not going to let disrespect continue to go on. And even if it's not disrespect, if it feels like that, I got to ask that question. I got to make sure that we're both tracking on the same thing. Um, did it with my mom. There are several conversations I had with my mom, and this is from a parental perspective, and God bless her soul. And the same with my dad. I tell him, like, look, you know, that's not right. And if you go watch my earlier videos, broken yet brilliant, I go through that background of that brokenness and then that abuse. But when I got to the latter stages in my life, I just make sure I'm respectful. I don't want you to misunderstand. Like, addressing conflict, you don't have to be disrespectful to address it, but at the same time, you don't have to tolerate it to a point where you get frustrated, and to the point where you start resenting people. That really, it really just really tears up relationships. And I remember just a year ago, we went to a funeral of my great aunt. Me and my sister on my dad's side, and got to meet some of my dad's family for the first time. And I'm 40, 45, so at the time I'm like 43, 44, and I'm meeting these people for the first time. And it was crazy because, one of my uncles or something came up, and we're sitting there talking with my dad, and he was like, hey, who's this young man? I'm in my military uniform. I mean, I knew that my aunt that passed away, but the rest of the family, I'm completely ignorant to who they are. I mean, we were just never around. I mean, when the mom and dad split up, I think I was like 5 or 6, young, and and there was a separation because we left Illinois. He stayed in Illinois. We came over to Michigan. But what was surprising is that his brothers and cousins came up to him, and it's like, hey, we didn't know you had any kids. And I'm sitting there looking at him, looking like, wow, what type of, at the time, like I said, I'm in my military uniform, and I'm a major and going through all this. And it's like, dude, I'm 44 years old. How do you not know you have kids? So as he's saying that, I say, hey, don't worry about it. We didn't know we had a father either. Just kind of joking like, hey, not only did you not know about me, we didn't know about y'all or him too much. I mean, and the father, I knew where he lived and stuff, and I visited him a few times, but it was far from what it would be a healthy relationship. But it's just the ability to not just accept what's being said to you, but then also just put it back in perspective and address it. I still love my dad. I mean, he's still living. I mean, I have nothing against that man. He's a better man today. And eventually we will have a sit down and have another talk. And maybe probably sooner or later because time is valuable. So um, don't try to avoid conflict to try to live an easy life, because easy is your enemy, just as conflict avoidance is. Like, you want to make sure you get to a place where you can address things at its smallest step, and you'll be paid for that. Don't be a part of the problem, be a part of the solution, and make sure that you're able to do that. So there's one last story I want to get to, but I want to get to the scripture about um, the easy life, and how that can be destructive. And it comes from Proverbs chapter 14. And on Proverbs, what I started doing with Proverbs, there's approximately 31 Proverbs. So just something for you young kings for wisdom. If you just want to start reading some scripture and just figure out how to navigate life, whatever day of the month it is, read that proverb and you'll start gaining wisdom throughout your life. So today's the 14th. I read Proverbs 14. So tomorrow's the 15th. Read Proverbs 15. And you'll start realizing that there's nuggets and stuff in that book. And then when you get later in life, you can progress to Psalms and other books. But as the infancy stages, read Proverbs. And Proverbs, where it talks about in 14:4, it says, where no oxen are, the manger is clean, but much revenue comes by the strength of an ox. So if if you don't have any ox to till your land, your manger is going to be clean. You ain't got to clean up a lot of crap. You ain't got to deal with a lot of stuff because the manger's clean, but you don't have no ox. But much revenue comes as a result of that ox. So you need the ox in order to increase revenue. So don't think that your easy life is your blessed life or your best life, because it may be that you just don't have any ox. You ain't gotta clean shit up. But just because you cleaning shit up don't mean that you're not living your best life. It just means you got revenue coming in. So you gotta make sense. So I had a friend, which spurred this video about conflict. You know, I sit here with Ro, and this was one of our friends, longtime friends, but one of his cousins, and I won't call his name, but if you came to the edge of the road and it ended, you would know there was a cliff. But the thing about this, I met him through Romaine, first cousin, whatever. But very bright guy, very brilliant, and grown to love this man. But something happened yesterday. He came, sent me a text, and said that he left a ladder on the side of my house. And I was like, man, hey, hold up. This ain't no storage area. Don't do that. And anybody that know me, leave in the comments, like, who could have done that? And I asked Marlon, like, who could have done that? Like, if you know me, the way I told him, I says, look, man. I get upset when you leave a cup on my counter. What makes you think that you can leave a ladder on the side of my house? Like, that's not okay with me. And he's like, oh, I was thinking you would be no problem, bro. You should say no worries. I said, nah, no worries indicates that it's okay. And that ain't okay. Like, I don't even want to set the conditions where it becomes a ladder today and it becomes something else tomorrow. So I'm going to take a walk out here. I'm going to try to show you. I'll give you a view, kind of see where I'm at and how I keep things neat and in order. And it's not to be an indictment on him. Yeah, that chair is out. I'm going to push it in. But I'm going out here. I'm going to try to show you something. And you tell me if this is out of place. All right, I'm going to show you something. And the reason I got this house is because it reminds me of me being a king and coming home to a castle, right? That's why I got this. Yeah, I'm going to mow my grass today, so apologize. I normally do it on the weekend, and today's Friday. So I'm going to do it. Look at it. That's my house. All right. Now let me show you something. And this was supposed to be okay with me. Just show you how I get frustrated. People leave cups on my counter, so I get a text while I'm not home that he's over here working, that he left a ladder on the side of my house. Now, look at my neighbor's yard. Now everybody around here, they keep their yard nice and manicured, right? Do you see a ladder on the side of their house? I don't see one. But let's get to mine. All right. Come on now. That'll look right. That'll like that's something I'm supposed to be okay with. So, make a long story short, you a little offended that I addressed him. But I tell you what, I'm offended that you thought that was okay. That ain't okay. So, just over 30 minutes, I'm letting y'all know, don't avoid conflict. Address it. And he was like, man, road gone. Man, we need to be coming closer together. You know, now that road gone. Well, I tell you what. Road gone. And when I get home from work, that ladder need to be gone too. Y'all have a good day, young kings. Be blessed.